Hello, welcome to the last day of reading week, and I hope you've enjoyed the sessions or recordings so far. So, as a reminder, we've covered a lot of ground in this week. We've looked at the reading skills you need to develop for success in OET and in the workplace. We've had a deep dive into parts A to C. And if you did miss those live sessions, the recordings are now available on both our Facebook and YouTube channels at Official OET. And today we're going to bring it all together, thinking about how you can continue developing your reading skills using sample tests for more than just test practice, and find out how you went with setting up your reading goals, which was the challenge I set you on Monday. So if you haven't attended any other sessions this week, I'd love you to tell me in chat which session you enjoyed the most, or perhaps which one was you found most useful. Put Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday into the chat now, or if you're feeling particularly generous, you can write all. And while you're doing that, we'll pop into the chat the links to the sample test we've been using all week and the smart key for part C that we distributed yesterday. And as a reminder, my colleague Shekinah is behind the scenes during the session. So if you do have any other questions about OET that you want to ask while we're going through today's session, feel free to ask those and Shekinah will be happy to help you. All right, that's really great feedback. We've got some people saying the part B session on Wednesday was most useful. A lot of you being very kind and saying all of the days were useful. Also, Jennifer was saying part A on Tuesday was good. Quite a few though for part B. So that's great. It's good that you feel like you've learned some different skills perhaps this week. You'll also remember that over the last 3 days, we ran a prize giveaway with our friends at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. Congratulations again to our 6 winners. We'll be getting your copies of the new OET trainer into the mail to you shortly. And if you'd like your own copy of this new book that contains 6 complete sample tests, step-by-step training, hints and tips for test-taking techniques, downloadable answer keys with explanation of why the answers are right or wrong, audios and further exercises, it's now available in the OET store, and we're putting the link to that in chat as well. But here is another question for you. After you finish a sample test and you've checked your answers, what do you do next? So I've got 3 options for you to choose from, 4 options, sorry. First option, option A, do you forget about it? There's no more use you think that you can get from that sample test. Or option B, do you keep it and review it closer to your test? Do you analyze it to work out the reason for your mistakes, which is option C? Or do you repeat it, option D, so that you can aim for 100% correct the next time you take it? Let me know in chat, what's your usual practice after you have taken an official OET sample test? All right, great responses coming through already. Lots of people saying C. We've also got some people saying C and D. Yep. I think those are the only options coming through. No one's suggesting A or B, just C's and D's. All right, that's great. The best answer is C. There is some value to options B or D, but A, which I'm really pleased that nobody selected, is certainly the worst option. So if we think about how do you analyze your answers, what can you do to really get the most out of the sample test after you've taken it? So you need to look at your answers with the key and work out the reason why you chose the incorrect answer. So that's the really important thing that you need to do with your sample test, not just say, was it right or wrong, but analyze why you chose the incorrect answer. And for reading part A, there are a number of common reasons, as you'll remember from Tuesday's session. So the first one is spelling. So any mistakes in your answer makes it incorrect. So that's a common reason that candidates get answers wrong in part A. Another common reason might be the grammar. So they've changed the grammar from the text to make it fit the question. This isn't necessary if you found the correct answer. If you're finding that you think you want to change the grammar from the text, it suggests that you haven't found the correct answer, because the correct answer will not need any changes from the text whatsoever. Omitting an S or other kind of grammar from the answer also makes it incorrect. So remember, we had people missing off the S from hot tubs, which was written in the text with an S. If they've missed off the S, made it singular, that makes it incorrect grammar. Legibility. This is how clear your answers are. If you're unsure about the legibility of your handwriting, show your answers to a friend or colleague who isn't familiar with what your handwriting looks like, and asks if they can read your answer without knowing what the answers actually are. And remember, you can always write your answers in full caps, as you can see on the screen, if you are worried about your legibility. Another common reason for mistakes in reading part A is if you have repeated words from the question, even if it's a synonym, or added unnecessary extra words that don't answer the question. Or another option is that you provided two answers. All of these will make your answer incorrect. And what we saw on Tuesday was that students had sometimes added unnecessary extra words. Remember the medication questions, where they'd added how many times a day the medication was being taken, or the method, whether it was IV or orally, and that wasn't necessary for the answer, which was just the dose amount. And a final reason why candidates get a question wrong in reading part A is perhaps they didn't understand the question, they didn't read it carefully enough, or they just ran out of time and made a guess. So look through your answers from when we did it together on Tuesday and try and decide for each one which of these was the reason that you made the mistake. For reading part B and C, the most common reasons are going to be the instructions. So if you didn't select your answer as per the instructions, so for example, you selected more than one answer, you used a cross or a tick instead of shading, this will make your answer incorrect. Another reason in part B and C is omission. So if you skipped an answer, you planned to come back to it, or you just ran out of time to answer the question, then this will make your answer obviously incorrect. No answer is incorrect. So always make sure you have an answer for the question. If you guessed the answer because you were running out of time, this can also become the reason why your answer is incorrect. Or if you remember while you were taking the practice test, you know you guessed it, and by chance you guessed it correctly, you shouldn't take credit for getting that answer correct when you're doing your analysis of your mistakes. And finally, if your answer is just wrong, is it because you misunderstood the question, your answer was only partially evidenced in the text, or you didn't understand some vocabulary in the correct answer option, which prevented you from choosing it? Remember that question that we looked at on Wednesday with the verb liaise in it, which a number of you mentioned you weren't very familiar with. Was that the reason why you got that question wrong? So once you've worked out the reason for each mistake, write or type out the list of things that you usually do as errors to create your own personal checklist of skills you need to work on to improve your score the next time you take a sample test and on test day. So for example, if spelling is a reason why you're losing marks in your sample tests, this is going to be something that you want to really make sure you're checking carefully. Whenever you copy an answer from the text, you want there to be no spelling mistakes on test day, so you're not losing any marks that way unnecessarily. And remember, the recommendation that OET give is that you're aiming at 30 to 32 questions correct as a minimum out of 42 on any official OET sample test. And if you're getting that as a minimum in your practice, you can then feel comfortable about getting a 350 on test day. Now, the average score from the candidates who submitted their answers in advance was 27 questions correct. I'd be interested to know, out of 42, how many you got correct from the sample test we've been working on this week. Was your score above the average from those candidates that submitted in advance? Was it the same? Was it below? How did you do with the sample test this week? While you're adding that into the comments, I'll mention that with these candidates who submitted in advance, who got the average of 27, many of them could have increased their score just from paying closer attention to their final answers. So, for example, the spelling or not repeating question words. And this score of 27 is still some way from the 30 to 32 that I recommended. So if you are someone who is saying they got this sort of score or less than 30, we'd recommend doing some more practice before you consider booking your test. It means you do need to work on your reading skills to increase the number of questions you're able to answer correctly. So reviewing all of the sessions that we've run this week will be a good place to start in improving those skills. But let's have a look at what's coming through. So we've got Cherry saying 28, Anna saying 30. Ikra is saying 36, which is great. What else have we got? Tanoja is saying 29, Maria 34. So well done to you. Kulvi is saying 26, Pratiksha 29, Rashika 27, Sandhya 27, and Elma 26. So some good scores, some room for improvement for some of you. Some of you are quite similar to the score that we can see on the screen. And I think it's good to know that you're not alone in needing to work on your skills. Many of you will have similar items on your checklist. So let's see what the common themes are. So from this sample test that we've been looking at this week, which part of the reading test would you say you personally need to do most work on? Do you need to work on part A, part B, or part C? Let me know in chat and feel comfortable by seeing other candidates who probably have similar areas to work on as you. So straight off there, I can see a lot of people saying part C. But we have got a few people also saying part A. I think part A, there's certainly areas that you can pick up marks that are otherwise being wasted unnecessarily. So part A is a nice, easy one to try and fix if you are making those sorts of mistakes with spelling or unnecessary extra words. Parts B and C, I can see a few B's and C's coming through now, do require a little bit more work on specific reading skills, and we'll recap some of those tips and strategies a bit later in the session. All right, here's another question based on the sample test you took this week. Which areas of general reading do you think you need to pay particular attention to? So do you think the thing that will most help you improve your score is building your vocabulary? Do you think it's your ability to work out the meaning of unknown words? Do you think it's being able to identify synonyms and paraphrase between the questions and the text? Or do you think it's understanding the writer's purpose? Which of those skills do you think you need to work on completely? All right, so Anna Maria says B and D. Sue says B and C. Liba is saying D and C. Nana is saying C and D. Yeah. So quite a lot for B, C, and D. Interestingly, not many of you are choosing A. We're going to focus a little bit more on vocabulary during this session. And I think you'll find actually with the things that I talk about to do with vocabulary, that it really underpins everything that you do for reading, and it can improve all of those other things. So if you're saying B, C, or D, actually building your vocabulary will help with all of those things as well. One more question about the sample test. Thinking about the specific strategies that we've been talking about this week, which ones do you think you need to improve? So do you think you need to improve your scanning skills, reading intensively skills, being able to identify the focus of the question, or using text features and organization elements? So things like the topic sentences in B and C, or perhaps in A, things like the table headings or bullet points. All right, so we've got quite a few C, so being able to identify the focus of the question is quite a popular response coming through. Also reading intensively and using text features. Yeah, so again, it looks like most of you feel quite comfortable with A, which was scanning, which is good. But there's a lot of similarity, as I suspected, between the kinds of strategies you all need to work on. So thank you for honestly sharing your responses. As I said, I'm going to go through some specific vocabulary and reading fluency strategies for the rest of the session. But just before I start that, I want to give you a few additional ideas about how you can use this sample test for other OET practice. So you can certainly analyze your answers to assist you improving your reading skills, but OET sample test can also be used for helping you with other parts of OET. So you can practice your listening skills by finding videos or podcasts covering the same topics as those used in reading part C. And you can use the topics in part A or B as stimulus for speaking and writing practice. So for example, can you remember a patient you've treated with a similar condition to the one in part A, which was cellulitis, or who you've used machinery or procedure on that was mentioned in part B? Write a few notes about what you can remember of the patient and use this to role play the scenario with a friend or colleague, perhaps advising the patient what to expect for the procedure, asking questions about how the condition developed. You can also look online for case studies involving patients with this condition and use the case study to write a letter informing the reader about the patient's history and requesting further care. So thinking about vocabulary, it's part of any test design to accurately test a candidate's comprehension. And to do this, test materials have to include vocabulary which is below, at, and above the testing range. And this means you should expect to find some unfamiliar vocabulary in your reading test. So this means when building your vocabulary, your goal isn't that when you start your reading test, you know every single word in it, but that you know on average about 95% of the words. With this proportion, you can then use other skills to make an educated guess about the meaning of unknown words, or you'll be able to distinguish that this unknown word doesn't impact your selection of the correct answer to the question, because it's in another part of the text from where you're reading carefully for the answer. So how do you find out how much you need to build your vocabulary? Well, I've got a quick exercise you can do. Probably you'll need to do this after today's session, but what I'll get you to do, and I'll show you how you do this on the screen, you look at paragraph 3 from part C, text 2 of the sample test. The reason that I've chosen this paragraph is because it's roughly 100 words long. So this exercise is something that you do with 100 words of a text that you're wanting to test. Is this at my reading level? So have a look at paragraph 3 from part C, text 2, and think back to when you first read it, and then underline any words that you didn't feel 100% confident about the meaning of. The text's on the screen as a reminder. So after the session, have a look at the text, underline any words that you remember being unfamiliar with, and then use this guide to understand how much you need to build your vocabulary. So if you underlined between 0 to 6 words as being unfamiliar, you could say this level of text is good for your reading level, and working on your vocabulary is less of an issue for you. If you underline somewhere between 7 to 12 words as being unfamiliar, the level of this text is slightly above your reading level, and you benefit from working on broadening your vocabulary a bit. If there's more than 13 words that you found unfamiliar in this paragraph, the level of this text is above your reading level, and you'd need to work on broadening your vocabulary as a priority. This is just a rough exercise, of course, and everyone, even me, can work on increasing their vocabulary. And the other good news is that a broad vocabulary won't just help you with the reading test, but all parts of OET and life in general when you're working in English. So it's definitely time well spent. And there isn't one perfect way to learn new words. So the best idea is to try out a few and find the one that works best for you. What is essential, though, is that you are regular with your practice. So you spend at least 5 to 10 minutes per day. And here are a couple of options. So the first one is that you write the definition of the new word onto a sticky note and stick these around the house in frequently used areas. So for example, stick them to your kitchen cupboard doors, to your fridge door, to your front door, to your bathroom mirror. Every time you go past that place, read the definition and say the word it relates to out loud. And there's actually evidence that the location of the sticky note can help memory retrieval. Another thing you can do is to create your own dictionary for new words in a notepad. You can create alphabetical sections or theme sections, and it's a good idea to write the word plus the sentence where you first read it to help remind you of the meaning and context. I've also got to share with you a number of free apps that are available for your phone, and they're designed to help you with building your vocabulary. So the first two you can see on the screen now are called flashcards.world and memoworld.online. And two more are Word Up app and from the Cambridge Dictionary app. So the links to those vocabulary apps are now available in chat. Some of them let you create your own word lists and set goals for how frequently you review them. Also for how many options you see if you're sort of choosing which is the correct meaning. Other apps use AI to present you with words relevant to your English ability and even your profession to help you learn new words. It's important to remember, though, that you cannot learn every new word you come across. Instead, what you need to develop is your ability to determine if the word is versatile. And what I mean by that is it going to be used in a wide range of contexts and texts, or at least in your profession? And one way to do this is to consider whether the word is a technical word linked to the particular topic or area of research that you're reading. And you can use a dictionary like the Cambridge Dictionary to help you with something like this. And we're putting the link to the Cambridge Dictionary into the chat now as well. And I'll show you how you can use this dictionary after you've read a text to decide, is this a word I want to read or not? So the first word, which is coming from that paragraph that I was showing you to decide how good your vocabulary is or how much you need to increase it. The first word is cognitive. And the dictionary tells us that this is a specialized word. It's technical to psychology. So while reading the definition is interesting, I wouldn't suggest actively trying to learn it. Another word from the same paragraph was minuscule. And the dictionary gives even less detail about it. It's even less common a word. It mentions that it's an American word, that it's a non-gradable adjective. So I wouldn't suggest trying to learn minuscule. Another word is accustomed. Now, accustomed has a C1 rating, C1 on the CEFR language scale. Some of you may be familiar that C1 is the same as a B grade in OET. So this could be a word you consider learning, but it depends on whether you're a student who found only 0 to 6 unfamiliar words in the paragraph, in which case this could be a good word for you to learn. Or if you're a student who found more than 13 unfamiliar words, this wouldn't be one of those to have as a priority. Finally, one more word from the same paragraph, inquiry. This is a B1 rating. B1 is actually below a C grade in OET. So this would be a priority to learn for any student if this is a new word for you. In the test, you'll also need to make use of skills to deal with unfamiliar words so you don't let them distract you. I'm going to show you how you can do this. So when you come across an unknown word, ask yourself whether I need to know the meaning to answer the question. If you think yes, you do, then you need to guess how it fits in with the sentence. If not, then you can just ignore it. So what do you do to make a guess? Well, the first thing that you should do is to use the context provided by the words around the unknown word to help you know what type of word it is. Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Then what you can do is look for parts of the word, such as the root, the prefix or suffix that you might know and that will help you make an educated guess. Let's look at minuscule as an example. So we've already discussed from looking at it in the dictionary that this isn't an important word for you to learn. So if you found it in the text, how could you guess, how could you use your knowledge of this word to help you make an educated guess? So looking at the prefix, which is mini, what other words do you know starting with the prefix mini? Here are some suggestions. So you might know the words minimal, miniature, minimalist, or minibus. And what do those words all have in common? They all mean something small or very small. So even though you don't know the word minuscule, using your knowledge of the prefix mini can give you a good educational guess that this is something to do with small size. Let's move on now to talk about reading fluency. And reading fluency might not be something you've heard of before. Perhaps you've only ever heard of speaking fluency. But in fact, it's possible to talk about fluency in all 4 skills, not just in speaking. Because what fluency means is your ability to use language easily, well, and quickly. A fluent reader will therefore be able to read quickly. In a first language, this is roughly going to be around 200 words a minute, but they can also read easily and with comprehension. Think about your speaking fluency for a second. We would consider someone a fluent speaker if they are able to speak with only minor hesitation that is caused by natural pausing rather than searching for words. And the same is true for reading. A fluent reader can continue reading without any hesitation caused by lack of comprehension and for a good period of time without feeling tired or confused. So for OET, reading fluency depends on your ability to read for 45 minutes without feeling tired and without significant hesitation, needing to reread a sentence a number of times to understand its meaning. So reading for 45 minutes is in one go is not something many healthcare professionals have the luxury of time for. But imagine if someone told you that you were needing to run for 45 minutes in a month's time. Not everyone, but most people would do some training runs, starting with maybe 5 or 10-minute stretches and then building up to at least close to 45 minutes each run before the event. If we continue thinking about this as a running example, if you didn't train in this way, the likelihood is you wouldn't be able to finish the race. You might have to stop and walk partway through, or you would arrive gasping for air and water. And this analogy works for reading too. If you haven't built up your reading stamina, your reading fluency, you might not finish the test, or you might get to the end feeling stressed and lacking in confidence about the accuracy of your answers. So how can you improve your reading fluency? Well, the simple answer in some ways is, as we said on Monday, it's read, okay? If you only read texts from sample tests, you're not going to improve as quickly as if you read widely and for enjoyment. So choosing texts that you find interesting is important, because if your reading is enjoyable, you'll find that you read more often and be more comfortable to read for longer to build up your stamina. And remember how you learned to read as a child. For many of us, it took weeks, months, years of practice. And while you're not starting quite at the beginning again, as English is your second language, to get up to the fluency that you have in your first language also takes time. So at least 30 minutes a day reading should be seen as a minimum. And here are some places that you can find interesting texts to read at a suitable level for OET. So you can look in textbooks that you used in high school or university on any subject, as long as they're in English. You can use EFL, which stands for English as a Foreign Language. So if you've studied English at school or at a language school since leaving school, any textbooks that you've got at an upper intermediate or advanced level would be useful here. You can also look in secondhand bookshops online for secondhand textbooks like this if you don't have any accessible to you at home. English language newspapers are also things that you can read. Magazines such as Time or Newsweek, or novels or short stories. Another suggestion is that you can join a library. Many libraries provide free online access, or with a small monthly or annual subscription to books, newspapers, magazines, audiobooks, and films. And it may even be possible to join the library completely online. Coincidentally, I was in a library last weekend, and libraries in Melbourne are running a reading challenge between June to August at the moment, setting readers 6 challenges to complete in those months that you can see on the screen now. So if you like the idea of this as a reading challenge, use these ideas to have a go and get yourself into a reading habit. The main requirement is that you choose things that you find interesting on any subject and enjoy the experience of reading. Another thing to remember is that while most of us read on a phone or tablet these days, if you are taking your test on paper, make sure you're reading on paper in hard copies of books or magazines several times a week too. And the other thing that I want to come back to that we talked a little bit about on Monday is to notice what you're doing while you're reading. So are you saying the words aloud or following the line with your finger or another marker? Are you listening to music, or is the TV on in the background? Do notifications disturb you if you're reading on your phone? Do you interrupt yourself to check the time or to speak to someone nearby? Ideally, the only thing happening while you're reading is that your eyes are moving across the words and your fingers occasionally move to scroll or turn the page. Even reading aloud or following the line with your finger isn't recommended, excuse me, as this actually slows down your reading fluency. You can only read as quickly as your brain can process the words for you to say them, or as quickly as your finger moves in line with your eyes. Another suggestion to improve your reading fluency is to try reading in phrases rather than word by word. So I'm going to show you an example of this from text 2, the first sentence. So as you start learning to try reading in phrases, you might break that sentence down like this. In the US, the expansion of patient access to electronic medical records has been accompanied by numerous studies investigating the experience of patients and clinicians. But as you get better at this, you'll start to be able to read in longer phrases. So, for example, in the US, the expansion of patient access to electronic medical records has been accompanied by numerous studies investigating the experience of patients and clinicians. Reading in phrases like this makes it easier to understand the writer's intended meaning, which can be lost when you are reading individual word by individual word. And those of you who joined me on Monday might remember we talked about how reading texts are everywhere, so much so that we often don't realize we're seeing and reading text all the time. So, for example, food packaging, laundry labels, street advertising, as well as the more conscious reading we do on social media, emails, and at work. And we also tried out a few activities that are really easy to practice whenever you come across a text and you have a bit of time on your hands. So even if you're not managing 30 minutes a day regularly, you can still chip off 5 or 10 minutes for that day, which is better than doing nothing. So here's a quick reminder of those activities. First of all, to improve your scanning skills, every time you see a bit of text, you can quickly scan it to find all of the nouns that are in the text, any words for people or another topic that you choose for yourself, any numbers that are in the text, any positive adjectives. It can be anything that you're scanning for. And remember, you don't need to start at the beginning of the text to develop your scanning skills. You can start anywhere in the text and just look for particular information that you challenge yourself to find. To help build up your skills of understanding the gist or overall message that the writer is communicating, again, pick a fairly short text, try and read it quickly, and then in your head, come up with a short statement to explain the gist, the main message the writer is trying to communicate. And the third skill, again, you can do with any piece of text that you come across. Particularly marketing text can be quite useful for developing this skill. Notice the adjectives and adverbs that the writer has chosen. How are the writers trying to make you feel in this text through their language choices, through those adjectives and their adverbs? Are they trying to make you feel positive, negative, happy, excited, like you want to buy the product? What are they trying to do? So I also want us to come back to this idea of reading challenges. So those of you who were here on Monday or you've watched the session since, know I encouraged you to set yourself some reading goals around how long you were going to read for each day, how many words you were going to read in a week. And I gave some suggestions of some free apps you can use to log and track your reading goals. So I'd like to know how you've got on with getting into some good reading habits this week. So I'm giving you a few choices to choose from on the screen. Have you managed to download one of those apps and set yourself some goals? Have you set the goals and stuck to them for 1 or 2 days, but then stopped? You ran out of time, perhaps? Or did you set yourself some goals and you're on track to meet some of them this week? So let me know if you're an A, B, or a C. And if you have downloaded one of those apps on the screen or you're using another app for tracking your reading, let me know which one you are using, which one you found works nicely for you. So A, B, or C. And let me know which app you're finding working for you. All right, so Kritika is first. She's suggesting that she is a B. Thanks for that. Mansoor is saying C. And we've got a few more, Jyoti Mani and Shanza and Rajnash, Maya, Alyssa all saying C. So congratulations, well done to you. Samina is a B. Sarah is an A. Fantastic. I'd also like to know which of those apps you're finding useful, because I think some of the other candidates who are joining online would be interested to know. So if you've downloaded one of those apps, which one have you found most useful? Or perhaps you're using another one, you could let me know which one you're using. So Get Bookly, Read More, Bookmate, or Storygraph. And just give a few more seconds in case anyone is able to share which app they have been using. It sounds like all of you have set your goals, but I'm not sure which of those apps you're using. If it's easier, perhaps we can say Get Bookly is number 1, Read More is number 2, Bookmate is number 3, and Storygraph is number 4. So if you want to say 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can see a few coming through for Bookmate, so number 3, that's good. Also for Storygraph, Hamid has chosen Read More. Abul Katir has got Storygraph. Bookmate. Yeah, so there seems quite a few from Bookmates from what I can suggest. All of these are free, and the first two are good for using with physical books. So if you don't like reading online or you don't want to purchase online books, you can set reading goals and then use it with a physical book. The last two, Bookmate and Storygraph, have within them online books that you can read and track at the same time. So great. So yeah, I would suggest that from the candidates who are putting through their suggestions, Bookmates looks like the most popular at the moment. So that's great. Thanks for letting me know. If you are a B, if you've said you've stuck to your goals for 1 or 2 days and then stopped, this is quite natural. We can all have good intentions, especially when someone like me is on hand to encourage you. But the tricky part is sticking to goals. And this is maybe where you need to think about how realistic your goals are. Obviously, a goal like reading 1 book a day is completely out of the question. So bring it down to something that you can fit into your regular schedule. So, for example, if one of your goals was a time limit that you want to hit each day, perhaps reduce it by 5 minutes. Or if you've set yourself a number of pages or a number of texts that you want to read each week, reduce it to something more manageable. To start with, creating and sticking to the habit is most important, and enjoying yourself while you're doing it. Once the habit is set and you find you're able to comfortably manage it, then try increasing it again to more of a stretched target. And remember this quiz from Monday. We're putting the link into the download, the link for the download into chat again now. Hopefully, after all of the sessions this week, you can say you're doing about 50% of these 10 things each time you read. And then you can start working on the others, the ones that you're not doing so far. But if you didn't download this on Monday, this is another useful downloadable resource that we're providing. We've given some explanation of why doing these things or not doing these things will help improve your reading skills. And one final thing I want to leave you with is reading enjoyment builds reading confidence, and that leads to reading fluency. So all three together are a recipe for success in OET reading. So just a couple more things to talk through at the end of Reading Week. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined a live session this week. I hope you found some inspiration to work on your reading skills and have a much clearer understanding of your personal strengths and weaknesses and how you can improve. I also want to thank the candidates who submitted answers in advance, which was so useful in being able to demonstrate common errors and how to avoid them. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our social channels for more content from OET and our all-star partners, and to visit OET.com for free preparation materials. And as a final bonus, I want to call out a new initiative from OET that you might have seen launched recently, which is called OET Career. We want to take the hard work out of finding healthcare jobs overseas by opening up a world of healthcare careers on our new career platform. OET Career will give you job opportunities with the best healthcare organisations in the UK and more. And it's totally free, easy to sign up to. And if this sounds perfect for your needs, you can submit your interest now for exclusive access to our preview trial. But numbers are limited, so don't wait to use the link that's coming through in chat now to register. Thank you so much, as I said, for joining me this week. It's been my pleasure to guide you through these skills for Reading Week. Myself and my colleagues at the education team will be back with you again very soon. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye for now.